Welcome to another Hangout on Air by Federico Ree, entrepreneurship coach and founder of Creative Entrepreneur. Good evening, my name is Federico Ree from Creative Entrepreneur in Melbourne, Australia, and I'm your host for tonight's Hangout. And tonight we explore pretty much what the myth of the intrapreneur is all about. We've all heard of the word entrepreneur, but as far as the word intrapreneur, it barely makes the dictionary, and I must say a lot of people out there are still quite unfamiliar with such terminology. And joining me tonight, I have a very special guest. His name is Matt Browne, and he's the CEO of a fantastic company called DoneSafe based in Sydney. And I'll introduce Matt formally in just a few moments, but how are you, Matt?
I'm fantastic, thanks Federico. How are you?
I'm absolutely fine for this evening. It's a lovely night here in Melbourne. So just before we get stuck into I guess the guts of tonight's program, I guess just to outline a few key pointers regarding tonight's event, I'd like to explore really what the definition is of entrepreneurship, as well as understanding from your perspective what your understanding or intake is of that term, as well as looking at your particular industry. And I might just elaborate a little bit further about what Matt does. So in a few words, I guess Matt is a strategy, governance and performance improvement professional, and his specialties are very much in the financial, mining, manufacturing sectors, etc. So quite a mouthful, Matt, and obviously quite a lot of experience on your behalf. So without prolonging your introduction formally, let's get going, and I'll pass it on to you, Matt, and perhaps you can talk a little bit more about what DoneSafe does and what inspired you to be the CEO.
Look, thanks for the introduction. I guess basically I've always been somewhat entrepreneurial. You know, I've always been setting up small businesses since a young age, my first one being around the age of 13, where I set up a small computer hardware stall at the North Rocks markets, funnily enough. And so I've always had a bit of a bug to run my own business. Kids got in the way of that, and I had kids quite young. And anyway, I ended up jumping out into the corporate world and worked my way through a number of organisations. So I worked at Woolworths for a while, but unfortunately I actually had an injury myself. So our software product's a health and safety software product, and I'll elaborate on that a little bit more. But basically, I had an injury, and that got me interested in health and safety and return to work and all of those sorts of things. I then worked at a number of great organisations, such as OneSteel, where I was responsible for health and safety in the mining part of that business. I then moved into the central safety team, where I got the opportunity to build a health and safety software package from scratch for that business. We went to market. We had a look what was out there. Everyone sort of came back well over $1 million in terms of implementation and well over $1 million in terms of ongoing license fees. So, something burnt inside me there. My background in safety, the fact that I'd been injured myself, the fact that organisations were charging a fortune for software in that space. And it just so happened that a mutual friend introduced me to my now business partner, who had a small business that was growing quite rapidly, had a few injuries and was having a bit of issues with the regulator. And he sort of said, "Can you help?" And between the two of us, we came up with DoneSafe, which is health and safety software for everyone. So we wanted a product that was really easy to use, really affordable, and that was attainable to all size organisations.
Right, Matt. I always love businesses that are easy to use and accessible to the masses and to the public, I guess, and obviously to the ones that particularly need your services and expertise. So let's sort of shift our attention a little bit towards the theme of tonight, which is about entrepreneurship. And do you consider yourself an entrepreneur, for that matter? Let's start with entrepreneurship before we go a bit more detailed.
Yeah, look, I definitely consider myself an entrepreneur. I considered myself an entrepreneur in hiding while I was in the corporate area, and that's now coined as intrapreneur. But I guess in many ways, I always was somebody that saw opportunities, wasn't afraid to go and have a good hard crack at making a difference within business, wasn't afraid to take some risks and bring some people along for the ride. And so I think that there's some of the things that define that sort of entrepreneurial spirit, and that's something I believe I have personally.
Right. So I'm really interested to see the comparison between entrepreneur and intrapreneur, and let's start to define perhaps the difference. So from your experience, what is intrapreneurship? Are you an intrapreneur, as well as have you dealt with intrapreneurs or perhaps even employee intrapreneurs in your company?
Yeah, absolutely. Look, as I sort of mentioned, while I was within big corporates, I was often defined as an intrapreneur, and I actually won awards while I was in business in some of those areas. But I guess, for me, I've always found myself gravitating towards other sort of hungry, people who are wanting to hustle and really make a difference within businesses. So I'd say, yes, absolutely. When I was in the corporate life, I would have classed myself as an intrapreneur. And then moving into running my own business, I'm looking for people with those same sorts of traits. So I believe it's really important in business to be hiring people that can, roll up their sleeves, really get things done, often, bootstrapping or on a shoestring sort of budget, and can make miracles happen.
Right. I love the word miracles. As entrepreneurs, we often achieve miracles if we commit to the task of growing a business over many years. So if we look at the traits of typical intrapreneurs and comparing that to the conventional employee, I guess, what would you say are the top 5 things that come to mind?
I think an intrapreneur is somebody who feels restless, and that restlessness comes from a desire to do things against the status quo. So the businesses that survive are the businesses that continue to innovate, and the businesses that avoid disruption are those that disrupt themselves. So I think those intrapreneurial sort of employees are the ones that are out there sort of disrupting. I don't like to use catch cries all that much, but they're the people that are constantly looking for opportunities to make the business better, whether it's reducing the cost to serve a particular organisation or coming up with a new competitive edge that business may not have today. I think some of those other traits that entrepreneurs demonstrate is that they're constantly learning and evolving. That doesn't mean primarily through formal education. That can often be that the type that'll read 2 books a month, like Mr. Zuckerberg has put on himself the challenge to read 2 books every month, for example. They're people that are learning from those around them and from mentors and take mentorship seriously. They're also people that are interested and hungry to leave a legacy behind, whether that's in the business that they're currently serving or whether that's a future endeavour.
Fantastic, Matt. That's a great definition and overall, perspective on intrapreneurs. So I guess the question is then why wouldn't every company hire intrapreneurs? Are there side effects, or do you see perhaps a lack of knowledge or ignorance about the whole concept of hiring intrapreneurs?
Look, I think that businesses need a wide variety of people. Intrapreneurs, by their nature, often go for the shiniest thing, and they're always looking to make improvements fast. They're restless by nature, so they're hungry to move on to the next thing once they've fixed a problem. Organisations need people who actually pick up that invention or that solution and continue to operate after the entrepreneur's finished with innovating. So, I think that all organisations need a really vast variety of people, and just hiring entrepreneurs, you'd end up with a lot of great, bright ideas, but you might not have the best delivery.
So is there such a thing as a balance or a split between conventional employees and intrapreneurs in a company? Like, is it a 50-50 split in order for it to function properly, or have you ever thought about that balance?
Well, I think personally that, the intrapreneurs tend to be that sort of maverick type of personality, and they're really hungry to make a difference. So if you had more than probably 10 to 20% of your business channeling that kind of activity, you might end up, disenfranchising those who are less intrapreneurial. So I think it's finding the right balance and really empowering those who want to make a difference in that way, but also on the flip side, empowering those who are quite happy to work really hard and to take on some of these inventions and drive them through to completion.
I love the word maverick personalities, and I think there's always room for such people in an organisation, but obviously they need to be tamed and they need to be managed very carefully. So let's talk about management of intrapreneurs. So from your experience, what is, say, the best way to manage intrapreneurs, and is there a process or a recipe for doing so?
Look, I think intrapreneurs require their own management style. I've found the best way to nurture intrapreneurs is to give them enough, to use a catch cry, you give them enough rope to hang themselves in many ways. You've got to give them some space. You can't micromanage them. I think with intrapreneurs, you've got to give them opportunity for growth. They've got to see a roadmap. They've got to see a future with the business. If they see that they're going to be pigeonholed, and if they make changes within the business or suggest things that their suggestions are going to go on deaf ears, you'll quickly lose intrapreneurs. They'll be off to the likes of organisations that are actually nurturing that sort of talent. I think the other thing you need to do is make sure that you're providing reward and recognition. And that's not a financial reward and recognition as such. Obviously financials are great. They're a hygiene factor, but it's giving entrepreneurs the ability to get access to talent, to get access to leadership mentoring from the leadership teams within big business, to get access to other organizations that they may be able to do secondments into to learn more about, for example, if you're in the finance sector, you may be able to get some experience in startups or in tech companies to actually more broaden your entrepreneurial skill sets.
Interesting. So you talk about various industry sectors like the finance sector. When I think about the finance sector, I just think about the accountant and that very sterile, non-entrepreneurial environment and culture. And what you're saying is there's an opportunity, or perhaps right now as we speak, in the finance sector, that there are entrepreneurs that operate successfully in an organisation. Is that right?
Yeah, absolutely. Look, I was really fortunate. The last role that I had before I jumped out to run DoneSafe full time was within the procurement function over at Commonwealth Bank. The great thing that I found while I was over there was that they were really fostering an innovation culture. Not just giving lip service to it. They created an entire level that was an innovation bay where you could basically go in with an idea and brainstorm with other intelligent people within the business and work out a way to commercialize that idea. They had hackathons regularly, which would allow you to actually get together with a group of people from across the business and try to hack out a solution to a problem. They had some great prizes and awards and other programs for those people who were successful, and there was promotion available. So I think, the financial service industry is trying to shake off the brown cardigan and pocket protector image that it's had from those sort of old 1980s commercials, and is trying to do something different.
Absolutely, and look, we can learn definitely from other industries, and what comes to mind first is the tech industry. There's a lot of disruption that goes on there, and a lot of innovation, and certainly the entrepreneurs play a big part, and the leaders that drive it all too. So I'm guessing that the finance sector can learn a lot from those industries. Is that right, within Australia?
Oh, look, definitely. I think that if you have a look over at Silicon Valley, and I'm fortunate, I'm actually going to be heading over there in a couple of weeks, which I'm really excited about, to sort of see what some of the businesses are doing over there. But, if you look into Silicon Valley and even at home in Melbourne, there's quite a fintech startup scene that's happening. And if the financial services industry don't move and don't continue to innovate, they will be disrupted, and they already know it. There are organisations out there, the top 10 banks globally are all looking at acquiring smaller tech companies to stave off the inevitable disruption.
So I suppose on a level of competition and to be competitive, would it be your recommendation as a business owner, as a CEO, to actually recommend other industry leaders to actually employ and manage more entrepreneurs as we evolve as a nation?
Absolutely. I think it's really important, as I mentioned, obviously not to get the balance wrong, but bringing in people who are willing to take risks, who are willing to innovate, who are hyper intelligent and want to make a difference within the business they're in, is the only way to survive disruption.
Okay, well, so you're actually stating that survival long term really hinges on good quality employees, or better still, entrepreneurs.
Absolutely.
For the viewers, just before we go any further, Matt, I just wanted to sort of summarise what we've achieved so far. So I'm talking to Matt Browne. He's the CEO of DoneSafe, a company based in Sydney. And tonight we're exploring the myth of the entrepreneur, and looking at pretty much what constitutes an entrepreneur, particularly their personality traits, and some of the things that Matt has stated so far. I'll read them out. They're restless individuals. They like to challenge the status quo. They're disruptors. I always like to see that word. Looking for opportunities and learning and evolving. And perhaps the best way to summarise that is that they're maverick personalities. We also have spoken about the management of entrepreneurs, and 3 great tips that Matt has suggested is don't micromanage them. I can certainly agree to that point. There's nothing worse than micromanagement, especially if you have that entrepreneurial flair. They need to see a roadmap, so good planning and a good vision ahead is really key and important. I guess that's also important to anyone in an organisation, and to reward those who deserve, the acknowledgement for their efforts and for their pioneering, etc. So, that's fantastic insight so far, Matt. I guess I just wanted to move forward and perhaps even look at the future of management of entrepreneurs and looking at Australia as a whole, as a nation, from your perspective, is Australia keeping up with the trends that are going on around the world? And, you know, is it a fair comparison to compare it to America and the UK? What's your insight on that?
Look, I think that Australia in many ways hits above its weight in terms of entrepreneurial flair and invention. However, I think from an intrapreneurial point of view, so corporations nurturing intrapreneurs, I think we probably are lagging currently in the global arena. So I look at organisations, you know, the 3Ms, the Googles, the DreamWorks. They've all got really established programs to nurture intrapreneurs within their businesses, and I think within the Australian landscape, as a general rule, and there are some standouts in Australia, but as a general rule, I would suggest that that businesses are lagging in terms of nurturing those intrapreneurs and really helping them to achieve great things.
And I guess you're certainly, you know, a pioneer of this whole methodology, or this whole philosophy of hiring the right type of people like intrapreneurs. So I commend you, and I congratulate you for your advanced thinking. So yes, Australia does need to step up its game as far as I'm concerned, and we do need, you know, the next Google, the next DreamWorks in Australia, and it'll be really interesting to see particularly which company is going to take that place. Are there any companies that you can think of in Australia that sort of have that position at the moment, or reputation?
Look, I think, you know, in terms of Australian companies, you know, there are a number that are doing well. I've already mentioned, for example, CBA as one that I've seen doing some great things. I think that there are a number of, and you know, one of the things I find, there's a lot of small businesses in Australia that are doing some incredible work. You know, you're fortunate to be in Melbourne, which I consider to be, you know, one of the, if you talk about a two-city Silicon Valley approach in Australia, you know, obviously Melbourne's got quite an over-representation of talented small businesses who are definitely out there and who are innovating. You know, the likes of Redbubble, of Red Balloon in Sydney. You know, there's a bunch around that are really doing some great things. If you look at organisations that are sort of global but have a big Australian flavour, obviously you don't have to look past Virgin and the likes of Richard Branson and what he does over there, and sort of Richard, you know, you look at some of the quotes that Richard's had, and you know, he sort of basically said Virgin could never have grown to the more than 200 companies that they now have if it wasn't for a steady stream of intrapreneurs. So, you know, I think there's definitely movement, but it's probably not fast enough in Australia as yet.
I love that quote from Richard Branson. I can certainly say it's one of my top favourites from me personally. So I guess your advice, if I'm reading between the lines, would be if I'm the owner or the CEO of a large company, it would be wise or perhaps a good idea to turn your attention towards the smaller companies, the smaller startups that are, you know, embracing entrepreneurship and intrapreneurship for that matter. Would that be right?
Absolutely. You know, I think one of the things that I'd recommend for big business, and, you know, I know that big business often second their employees out to universities and to volunteer organisations. I'd suggest they second their employees out to nimble startups, get a feel for true agile development and implementation and true agile business practices, and sort of get them sitting next to, especially those who are identified in big corporations with entrepreneurial flair, get them side by side with a mentor in a small to medium business who's hustling and grown something from 0 to 5 or 5 to 50, you know.
Excellent. So if I'm a listener tonight and I believe I am the intrapreneur, what would be the best way perhaps to contact you? Because at the end of the day, you're always on the lookout for talented individuals who are the rule breakers and the mavericks of the industry. So what would be the best way for them to contact you?
Look, you know, in terms of intrapreneurs who are looking for the next opportunity, we are always looking, and, you know, I've got a network of other small businesses that I work with. We're always looking for the next person who will help to grow our business, you know, and somebody who's willing to get in here, roll their sleeves up and learn a thing or two. But also we want to listen to them and really give them the opportunity to tell us what we could do better. You know, I think that's really important. I think if they wanted to get in contact with me, the best way is usually on LinkedIn, and that's sort of how we met. But, you know, again, I find LinkedIn's a great tool for meeting people who are like-minded, and you know, I've had a lot of approaches from some great people, and I've hired a number of them on our team, which has been great.
And that's proof of your success so far. I'm sure that your track record so far has been a result of your efforts and focus on such individuals. So just before we wrap up, Matt, there's probably one other question or topic I'd like to sort of address are the issues and challenges that come with dealing with entrepreneurs. One way of looking at it is, how do conventional employees perhaps deal with entrepreneurs, and do they feel intimidated by such people? And are there any major side effects that can actually take place on a day-to-day by perhaps over-investing in those type of people?
Look, as one of the things that I mentioned, getting the balance right is really, really important because, again, intrapreneurs can be polarizing. If you look at entrepreneurs who have been very successful, they're often polarizing individuals, and they, often have a camp of people that love them and a camp of people equally who dislike them quite greatly. So, I think getting that balance right is really important. I think in terms of managing intrapreneurs and working with intrapreneurs, from a management point of view, it's really important, as sort of mentioned, to give them the space and the time. But when working with them, it's also equally important to make sure that intrapreneurs know that they can't, exclude people. They should be encouraging people to get involved, and they should be working collaboratively together to deliver on some of these great ideas.
Awesome. And how do they handle the entrepreneurs? So what happens when you put intrapreneurs and entrepreneurs together in the one environment?
Look, I think when you put intrapreneurs and entrepreneurs into the one environment, you get some very interesting and often heated discussions, and that's fantastic.
Awesome stuff.
We're really fortunate that in my business in DoneSafe, we've hired well above our weight. We've got, for example, the ex-MD of Nice Systems is our VP of Sales. We've got the ex-head of development over at MYOB is now our CTO, and they've all joined us post the founders, setting this business up. They challenge us on an everyday basis, and it's that challenge that creates the competitive tension within our business to make sure that we're successful.
And hence their nickname Mavericks. So thanks again, Absolutely. Matt. Look, I really want to thank you for tonight. I know you've had a very big week or a couple of weeks, and I'm sure you've got lots of other things to do at this time of day. So a big thank you, and I really appreciate your insight on the subject of intrapreneurship. So take care.
Thank you. Grateful for your time as well. Cheers.
You're welcome.
For more of Federico's Hangouts on Air, please visit www.creativeentrepreneur.com.au.